おい、聞こえるか。上から落ちてきた3階。それが俺たちだ。でもな、ただのゴミじゃねえんだよ。真っ暗な闇の中で目を覚ます。鼻をすくさった匂いと泥。
What's up, givers? We're turning trash into treasure today, so follow me cooking this build by first printing the Gachiakuta template. The blueprint is in the description if you wanna cook along. First up, we need to trim off the margins. Mesh up the template, then tape it down securely. Now this is what I usually like to do, glue it to the cardstock, so it can survive better in the chaotic mess of my workshop. Next up, grab the flat template from the files, and give it the same treatment. Trim the white space and match them out with tape. Slice out the symbol, keep the remaining and use it as a stencil. Now go back to the Gachiakuta template and extract the huge arc part from template, and then make 2 copies on 5mm foam. Now grab the stencil and transfer the data, lay it down and trace the void. Next up, give it a 45-degree angle bevel cut at all the edges. With this cut, we can give a really clean seams to every corner. With those pieces cut out, we can move on to this one. Make 2 copies on 1cm foam and mark the arrow. It indicates the midpoint. I cook the foam with heat gun because it is slightly warped, so a little heat will soften it and will stay in shape once it gets cold. Now for the internal hardware, we are embedding a 20cm aluminum tube right at the arrow mark. I'm using steel epoxy because it works better at bonding metal to foam. With the cold lock in, let's activate the Jin key. To get that raw power lock, I'm running a blue 12V LED strip through the prop. This is what brings the trash to life. Do a quick fit check, let it out to see where the cut needs to happen. Trim it down with a scissor, but please, for the love of crafting god, only cut the mark with scissor icon. Use the built-in adhesive, give it a good squeeze to make sure it grabs the foam texture. Moving on, I'm doing a little DIY surgery. I gotta peel off the clear resin layer here because, low-key, this is the only LED strip I have on deck right now. Once that's prepped, we got the soldering. Just a heads up, the magic smoke is usually toxic, so ventilate the room unless you wanna have that last 3 business days. Now we connect the dots. I'm taking all these individual pieces and daisy chaining them into one straight line, like a LED human centipede or LED centipede and less traumatic. The moment of truth, we gotta by-check the connections. I'm plugging it in to make sure it lights out perfectly, unlike in my future, which is looking kinda dim right now. Now the LEDs are done, but the strips is too skinny for the housing, so I'm adding a cushion layer to make the aluminum a little thick, which means adding this cushion so it stays snug and doesn't fall out. We're making something like this, adding foam on 4 sides of the aluminum and fix them on with steel epoxy again. To be safe, we gotta stop the jiggle. I'm gluing the wire to the foam to act as strain relief. Basically, we don't want any movement snapping the solder joint. As expected, the stock tape started quitting on me immediately. It barely stuck, so I brought a super glue to force it into submission, so it can stuck around unlike my past relationship. Now that the LED structure is low-key done, we're finishing the side quest and heading back to the main story. It's time to hop back over the arc and start grinding on the symbol. To start things off, we are literally hitting delete on the old symbol. I'm cutting them up and removing them from the arc. And then we are swapping that space out for some translucent foam to get that glow. After that, we are doubling up and cutting 2 sets of this. I'm using 2mm translucent foam especially because it hits the perfect balance. It makes the whole piece shine without showing the ugly individual LED bits. Next up, I'm slotting the symbol into the arc. I'm focusing on making them completely flat, so that they can sit flush with the surface. While we are at it, we are pulling a big brand move. I'm flipping it over and use the cutout symbol to press the foam into place. This way, I'm getting a perfectly even surface without accidentally poking a hole in the foam with my fingers. Following that, I'm hitting everything with a super glue to lock it all in place. Only if glue is strong enough to hold my life together too. But honestly, we'll settle for the symbol not falling apart. With everything attached, let's do a quick test to see how it actually looks like. As it turns out, the lighting was giving low battery energy, the coverage was uneven, and it is definitely not something I'm after for, which led me to add another strip in the middle. Pun intended. At this point, it is a total win in my book, but if you want it to be even more blinding, you can definitely add more LEDs. It is your project, your chaos. Now that we are officially done with the LED part, for now at least, the next move is to cover them up and get this thing looks like a finished prop instead of a science experiment. We're cutting this out of 5mm foam. To make it work, we're doing 45-degree bevels on all the seams. It is a bit of grind, but it is the only way to get those corners looking perfectly seamless and satisfying. So, fun fact, I didn't actually have the foam long enough to this. Because of that, I decided to slice a long piece in half at a circle section. Afterwards, I'll just glue it back. The seam will be totally hidden, so it basically like never happened. And here is where the magic happens. Since we bevel all the edges, we can glue them up without any of those crusty seams showing. We're left with nothing but a clean factory finish corner. Moving forward, we're doing a little measuring. I'm grabbing a ruler to find a midpoint before the other side goes on. The goal is to attach the LED holder right at the center so the lighting can stay symmetrical and aesthetic. Another quick test and it is actually looking pretty cool so far. Now that the vibe check is complete, we are going for that clean finish. Let's proceed to cover up this side and officially close the guts of this build so we can finally see the full shape. Another quick test again because why not? The paranoid inside me has to make sure both sides are okay. Next up, we're giving the spine the massive buff. I'm grabbing a 1-inch aluminum pipe, measure it out exactly 15 cm, and then I'm going with a pipe cutter to get a clean factory edge finish. Once the cut is made, I'm going with a deburring tool to clean up those sharp edges, and then I'm sliding the stuff piece right into it for that perfect fit. Next up, I'm using sandpaper to buff this corner, followed by a bit of super glue to make sure it never moves again. And because I'm a paranoid, so I also put a little bit of epoxy to make sure it's surely not moving anymore. One part down, 50 to go. Just kidding. Next up, what we need is to make this part. I've already done the legwork and labeled that required foam thickness right on paper. All you gotta do is follow the shapes on the template and make them a reality. It's the same energy over here. We're beveling the edges just like before so that we can get those nice smooth corners. Once it is done, slide the stuff into positions and then hitting it with super glue to fix it in place forever. Moving right along, we are batching out some details. You will need to make 2 copies of each plate using 2mm foam, and then we are using the template to mark the positions. Once the marks are done, we are heating them with contact adhesive. As for this button, cut 12 of them and leave it for sanding later. Now let's move on to these pointy horny sections. I decided to do a little extra work here and upgrade the build by changing out the foam thickness I used to stack it. For each horn, we need 2 1cm pieces and 2 5mm pieces. First step, grab your 5mm foam. We're using a toothpick at the very tip and then we mark that position. This is the ultimate low budget high IQ move to make everything stronger. Moving forward, I'm using a razor knife to make 2 opposite bevel cuts to create a V groove. After that, we're locking the toothpick in with some super glue. The reason we are doing this is to reinforce the tip. Since foam can be pretty fragile, the toothpick actually gives it a skeleton so it won't get damaged or crushed when you are out at con. Now for the big brain move, take the other side of the foam and push it firmly against the toothpick to leave it at the exact mark. After that, we are making another V-groove cut on that side so that the toothpick can be sandwiched perfectly flat and flush. This is the only way to get a seamless fit. Now it's time to build the stack. First, sandwich the 2 5mm foam together with contact adhesive. This seals off toothpick support inside. After that, we are going to sandwich a 1cm layer onto both sides to hit that final thickness. It's like a foam Big Mac, but way more aesthetic. As you can see, I've tucked a piece of paper in the middle of the layers. I move it slowly as I stick in the foam pieces together. It helps with the alignment process and keep the whole thing from becoming sticky mess before everything is lined up. Now that we have got our stacks, I'm going in and marking the edges. By doing this, we have a perfect reference for the sanding phase. Next move, we are doing a rough sculpt. I'm slicing away the excess foam on the corners with a blade. We're just getting a general shape down before we go in for the fine details, so that we are not spending 3 business days at the sanding station. Now let's move on to the spiky part. There are actually 2 ways to handle this, and the first is a classic paper method. You will want to follow the template, hit it with those bevel cuts and glue it up. Insert a toothpick into the tip for reinforcement so it don't go soft on you. If your initial bevel angle isn't sharp enough, don't sweat it. You can always sand it down afterwards to get that little low angle point. For the second method, we are going in with a more solid approach. Instead of the hollow Pepakura shell, we are using the spike pattern from that flat template and making 2 copies on 1 cm foam for each spike. As you can see, the toothpick trick is also being used here. By doing this, we are creating a thick, sturdy base that we can really carve into later. Personally, I prefer the sanding method. My logic is, if the Dremel is already plugged in, why not just go full sanding? Alright, time to fire up the Dremel. It's time for the fan favorite, sanding. Pro tip, start with the 80 grit for your rough pass. The goal here isn't to be pretty yet, it's just to carve the general shape out of the foam before we move to the final details. Another essential tip for sanding foam, always follow the rotation directions of the Dremel, never go against it. The reason is that the speed is so high that if you catch an edge the wrong way, the Dremel is going to bite into the foam. So save yourself the heartbreak and follow the flow. With the basic shape locked in, we need to clean up the maze. I'm swapping to a 240 grit drum so that we can smooth out the entire surface. The goal here is to buff out all these heavy scratches and make the surface look incredibly smooth. Lastly, if you want even more control, you can always go old school and use sandpaper to hand sand. By doing this, you can really smooth out those subtle ridges or shadow lines left by those sanding drums. It's a little bit of workout, but it's the only way to get a surface that's truly flawless. After the dust settles, this is the result we're looking for. Before we attach them onto the staff, we still have a few more parts to do. Let's pivot back and continue with the rest of the parts. Just like the parts we did earlier, the Pepakura is your best friend here. Just follow the templates and you will get a shape. However, for this specific piece inside, we're actually pushing it inside before glue it down. Now that we have made 4 of this, also don't forget we have to make 2 of this, the other side of the hole. Let's keep the build moving. This section right here acts as the platform for the spike we walked on earlier. Once this is ready, we'll have a solid base for those points to sit on. Mark your spot and secure the spike in place. I'm using super glue for a fast rock solid bond. Now grab the flat template and mark out all the positions. We've spent so much time on the individual pieces, but we're finally attaching them onto the main body. And here is how the whole thing looks like. I gotta say, I'm already loving it. With the build looking solid, we need to talk electronics. I'm installing a dedicated switch and a battery housing now, since obviously we need a way to control all the lighting. I've picked the spot for the switch, which is at the side of the handle, so let's get it marked. Next up, we are switching gears to the core. I've got a fiberglass cutting plate loaded up since we need to slice through metal. A quick safety PSA, this part generates spark and fine metal dust. You must wear a respirator and eye protection. And keep your fingers as far from the cutting path as possible. We're making a prop, not a sacrificial ritual. The trick to getting this perfect is to cut inside the sharpening line first. After that, you slowly clean out the edges and widen the hole bit by bit until the switch can just barely slice through. Take it slow with the Dremel. If it's too tight, don't try to jam it in. As they say, you can't force happiness. Just like the friend circle you've been trying to force yourself into. To really nail the fine tuning, I'm switching over to a diamond bit and a hand file, slowly widening the hole and checking the fits as you go. By doing this, you avoid overcutting and ensure the edges are clean, smooth and perfectly sized for the switch. Once the fit check is done and the switch is sliding in perfectly, I'm actually going to cover the aluminum tube with a thin layer of foam. To get a perfect wrap, I'm ditching the tape measure and using my self-made foam ruler. Because the foam has thickness, it creates a different outer diameter than the tube itself. Using the material itself to measure, ensure that my cuts are exact and the seams made out without any stretching or gaps. Once the foam tube is slid into place, let's open up the switch hole. I'm picking the seam line for this cut because consistency is key for a good build. If you hide your seams and your hardware on the same side, it's much easier to control how the prop looks in photo and on display. Time to get this wire up. We are splicing our switch into the positive line. Before I touch the soldering iron, I'm sliding some heat shrink tubing on. Since our core is aluminum, we are insulating the joint so it doesn't ground it against the aluminum pipe, as short circuit inside your prop is a one-way ticket to taking the whole thing apart again. Even with the heat shrink on, I can still see a tiny sliver of exposed metal and I'm not taking any chances. To be 100% safe, I'm wrapping it with some vinyl electrical tape as an extra layer of defense. By doing this, I can sleep better knowing that no matter how much I move or swing this staff, those wires are never going to touch the metal core. With the switch secure, we are moving on to the internal support. We need a foam cushion, about 20 cm long. Insert roughly 10 cm in to use it as the detachment slot, and use epoxy to fix it in place. It will give the other side of the handle a snug fit and prevents it from sliding off. Time for the juice. I'm using 3 18650 3.7 volt batteries, and next I'm measuring this up to build a custom home. Because why buy it when you can DIY it? Well, because we can't find the exact one, I guess. To make this setup professional, I'm using these connection plates for both the positive and the negative pole. But I trimmed the spring off a little because we don't need so much tension in the holder. I'm making a cardstock template with a 2mm extension for the battery plates. The goal is a snug fit, and since I'm using 2mm foam, the natural elasticity will give us the perfect tolerance to hold the battery tight without being too small. Time to seal the ends. I'm dressing the tube with the battery inside to get a perfect fit for the connection plates. The goal is to make 2mm foam caps, and that is where the connection plate will sit. However, we run into a bit of an issue. The foam is hugging this battery so hard that I decided to move in permanently. Unless I want to build a whole new stuff every time the lights go dim, I need to fix it. To fix the tight fit, I heat the foam until it softens, insert the battery, and let it cool so it remembers the exact shape. And then make a rectangular cut along the seam. The goal is to create a flexible cradle that keeps the battery secure, but allows them to be removed easily through the relief cut. Time to solder the wires to the plates. I'm trimming them to size and use a helping hand to keep everything steady. I'm doing a little wire surgery here. My negative wire fell a few centimeters short, so I'm extending it with the positive wire axis. As you can see here, I'm using another heat shrink tube because I don't want any potential short circuit that may or may not happen. Moving on, I'm sanding the back of the connection plates to the bond better with the foam. Now let's attach the positive pole and gluing down the wire. I'll cut a small gap in the foam if needed to keep the profile low. The goal is to prevent the wire from getting stuck or pinched when we put the handle on. And the rest is just attaching the battery holder and a negative pole, just like my bank account after cosplay. Always end with a negative. As for the wire management, cut a channel on the foam holder if needed. Now let's do a quick test, fit in all the battery and see if it works. Unlike my past relationship, it is working pretty well. Now let's attach the remaining handle sections. I'm aiming for a total staff length about 6 feet. This height works best for standard Asian proportions. I'm cleaning out the fuzzy edge after the cut, so the metal won't scratch the foam or cut into wires. Let's finish off the base. I 3D printed this round bottom tip, but a ping pong ball or Christmas ball work as well. Fill it with hot glue to make it solid and durable before attaching it to the base of your staff. After giving the handle some bows, time for the handle skin. Wrap it like before by adding 3 shallow cuts at the bottom with 1 cm gaps. Those cuts will be heated on later and the heat can open up the gaps. We are very close to finishing the base stuff. I almost forgot the Illuminati triangle on the arc. I'm tracing the face with my template and using a 5mm foam spacer to mark the size. After that, use a razor knife to score the lines, just like how we did to the handle previously. And I also decided to stick the round button now. I was going to paint them separately, but I changed my mind. Now it is really time for the final step. I'm going over the surface with a heat gun to slightly melt the exterior and close up those tiny pores. The reason is that this heat sealing process means we'll need few layers of primer later. Just a warning though, stay away from the seams where you use contact adhesive. Heat reactivates that glue and it will cause your seam to pop open. Right after that, use a trusty masking tape to cover up the symbol, because we want the light to pass through, so we don't want any paint to stick on there. Now it is time to prime. You could use PVA or white glue. I spent all my money on the costume way, or plastic dip the I have spare kidney to sell way in where I'm from. Since I like my kidneys, I'm using an air compressor and water-based paint. It's fancy, efficient and cost saving in the long run. After a few layers of priming, it's decision time. This is when I decide if I am happy with the texture or if I need to go for a full smoothing pass. This time, I'm being honest, I'm lazy so I'm happy with it, but I still sand off the fuzzy parts like messy glue corners or rough patches from the earlier sanding. I also use wood putty to bridge those tiny gaps and pores that primer didn't quite fill. This is the secret to make an even more clean and pro finishing. After this step, I will usually go another 2 layers of primer just to be safe. First color up is the blue honey color. My tip is always paint the easiest to mask part first and leave the hardest for the last. Because no one loves the godforsaken masking process. Since I'm using a spray gun, I always prefer to use raw paint and mixing my own custom cocktail to get the color as close to the reference as possible. Basically, I keep mixing until I either hit the color or I hit my limit, because my wallet told me to stop. But even so, the OCD in me still wanting to paint a thin layer of metallic blue to get a better finishing, and hoping to get the color as close as possible. Once the paint is as dry as my single life, it's time to start masking. I'm using old office document to cover the large part. It is a great way to give used paper a second life, unlike me. Now it's just a matter of repeating process, masking and painting, one color at a time until everything is finished. At least it will finish, unlike my suffering. Now that everything is painted, it's time for the big reveal. This is where you start praying to every celestial being and your cat that the paint god were on your side. Basically, I'm offering sacrifice to the god for masking tape. If the paint chip off now, I might actually join my office document in the trash. Once we have confirmed the paint is perfect, let's move on. I'm using this life-changing hem rod for, you guessed it, the rope detailing. I prefer it to be thicker, but this is all I have on hand. Initially, I wanted to use one long continuous piece for all the sections, but I quickly realized that splitting them into individual loops is much easier. I'm cutting each pieces of the rope to the exact length I need and secured it with a hot glue. Now for the truly final part. I dug up some leftover blue fabric from my Monster Hunter cosplay and freehand cut 2 straps. Time to play with fire. I'm hitting the edge of the strap with a lighter to stop the fast apocalypse. Now I'm securing the blue strap with double-sided tape. Essentially, this gives me total control over the tension. I can pull the fabric tight and it sticks instantly without me having to hold it in place. It's a quick, clean and effective way to finish the grip without the risk of ruining my paint job with the glue strips. And with that, we are done.
おい聞こえるか上から落ちてきた3階それが俺たちだでもなただのゴミじゃねえんだよ